Welcome to the Unboxed Pearls podcast, where today we're going to have a conversation that is a raw conversation about the immigration story coming from Africa. I want you to meet two of my friends. I want you to meet Rita and I want you to meet Monica. They're going to tell their stories, and it's not a matter of whether you're going to agree with it, it's not a matter of whether you're going to be able to do anything other than relate to the story that they're about to tell. This is their story. So we thank you so much for attending this Unboxed Pearls podcast, and we look forward to more podcasts as they come. So I want to say hello. Hey, Rita.
Hello. Hello. How are you doing?
Right. I'm good. How about you?
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. How about you, Monica? How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank
Good.
you for having us. We appreciate it.
Excellent. You know what? Thank you both for agreeing to do this on a very new podcast. Just not even knowing how this will come across, but just your willingness speaks volumes about who you are and how important this story is. So I want to just jump into it. I just want to go in and have you just tell us, first of all, just share your immigration experience as you know it, as you feel it. Just looking back over when you first came, how did it look knowing that you would come to the US? What did you think about the US before you got here? And did you see something different by the time you got here? So just talk to me about that. We'll start with Rita.
Okay. Immigration story. There's different phases of your immigration story. So it's when you first come, there's the middle, and where we are now. So when we first came, we were pretty young.
I was 13.
Yeah, and I was going into college. I just graduated from high school. Our story's a little different because we had some siblings here who were going to college, so we knew a little bit about the U.S., but we didn't really know. So we were coming to Alabama, and our siblings lived in Louisiana, going to LSU. And we thought, oh, when we come in, we'll see them, not knowing how vast and how big. One big misconception people have is that Africa is a country. We're a continent. So you can get places.
Yeah.
You can in the US. So that was a kind of startling. We expected it to be no broken down cars. Everybody lives in a mansion. Y'all eating chicken every day. So we had all these high hopes, but we also knew coming here that, it's a lot of hard work, but it's also a place where your dreams can come true. That mantra, you come here, you work hard, you make it. And so that was my first impression. What was yours?
Yeah, I think I like my mom and I was the youngest, and so I was my mom's handbag. So I had actually come with my mom previous to actually moving here, and we went to visit, and we went to Baton Rouge and visited LSU. So I kind of had a conception of it again, but again, we thought, things would be, easier. Everybody in the US is, fairly wealthy. Just a land basically of milk and honey. And, because we saw it, the US, in movies and in the larger entertainment world. And so I think most people have some idea of what the United States is like and have seen the images, and so we had some idea of it. I came when I was younger. I was 13. I remember on the plane, one of the movies we watched was Forrest Gump. That's what I watched, and I was coming to Alabama, and that was a little scary. It's just like, what are we getting into? But I would say overall, I think it was positive that we were going to be in a new place. And my dad had previously moved there to the US about a year before we came. So he came first, and then we came about a year after. So we were joining him and basically starting over. And this was not new to us because we had moved around quite a bit. I was born in Cameroon, so just to back up, our family is originally from Uganda, but I was born in Cameroon. Rita was born in Lesotho, which is a small country in the middle of South Africa. And so we were used to travel, and then my dad would travel as well for work. He went to Europe. So we it was foreign, but we had some concept because we had moved, you know, like it seemed like pretty much every 4 years we moved to a different country. So that was our general experience in the beginning.
Wow.
And then when you get here, people don't understand you. You speak too fast, you speak too slow, there's an accent. And first impression is people hear an accent and they think you're not intelligent, you're not smart, you don't know what you're talking about. It kind of makes you nervous to speak. It's weird because you're like, they're not gonna understand me. Or they'll say something to me and you'll just smile like, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what they just said.
Yeah, especially in Alabama, because the Alabama accent is pretty thick. Like it's pretty strong drawl. Yeah, I think you know, again, you know, people don't think you're smart, you know, and so I remember having, you know, some concern about what grade, you know, I was in 8th grade going to 9th and sort of being a question of, hey, do you need to repeat the 8th? And I think my mom, you know, fought hard for that not to happen because, you know, we might have had a different accent, but we, you know, had been going to school and we, you know, were educated. So.
And
That
then
is a big misconception. You know, for those especially, I would say it's big for those coming from the continent. And I'm so glad you brought that up because so many times we will say Africa thinking that it is a country, and it absolutely is a continent with many countries in it. Um, if we take ourselves back to even how those of us born here got here 400 and plus years ago, it was through slavery. We came from Africa, and it was not people wearing grass skirts or necessarily in tribes living in, I don't even know what you call it, the woods or whatever you want to call it. The thing is that these were educated people. These were doctors. These were lawyers. Children at 9 years old would write books. But if you Google it, you will not find that information. This is something that you would have to study to understand how we started as a people coming over. These bodies were stolen, they were kidnapped. Some of them did have wealth. Some of them may have been kings, and you brought them over to this country in slavery. So it was not that they're not educated. I think it's a miseducation
Right.
on our part of who you are when you come
Right.
over, just
And I
because we can't understand.
Yeah, and I'd
Go
pick
ahead.
up back on that because my field of work is I'm an immigration attorney. And so just in looking at migration patterns, based on the distance between Africa and you in the United States, like so whereas it's not like certain countries where there's a geographical proximity and you can sort of, you know, come or cross a border or, you know, whatever happens, there has to be an effort to buy a plane ticket to you know scrounge up some few dollars to come. So you know, you are gonna have, you know, I'm just gonna say you're gonna be relatively middle class to even be able to afford the ticket because most people can't afford that. So I think that's a big misconception is that you know, I mean, there's other ways you could win the lottery, you know, there's a US Visa lottery system, but generally you're going to have some means in order to be able to even get here, right? Because of the many waters that you have to fly across. So,
Yeah. Thank you for dispelling that myth. Thank you so much for dispelling that because that is a huge one. And it's a huge one that really disconnects us from one another as people of color, Black people in particular, when we have to call ourselves African American. It can just put a wedge between. And I'm so grateful because I have a friend in Rita who, no matter how ignorant I may bring the question, she's able to answer it and get me back on track and get me straight on some things. And that is important that we don't even shy away from the ignorance, but we dispel all of those myths along the way. Because one thing I don't like is for anybody to define who I am. You are not able to define me. Do not give me a label that defines me less than who I am because I do understand where I came from. I did study that when I went to college. I didn't study history as we call it here in the US because I felt like it wasn't really telling my story, nor was it telling the true story of how it happened, making slavery look like it was a good thing, like as if we enjoyed being robbed, stole, our diamonds being stolen, uh, gold being stolen, land being stolen, and then brought way across seas with our family dying and then separated. We didn't enjoy that. So thank you for dispelling that. Rita, did you have more to say on that one?
No, no.
Okay.
And I mean, I would just
Go ahead.
piggyback and say that I think the images matter, right? For both ways between Africans and African Americans. So a lot of the times when you saw Africans on TV or you see African American, and I will say that a lot of Africans, believe it or not, also have a lot of misconceptions, I would say, about African Americans based on Hollywood, based on the images that were shown. So when you see Black people, they're in the in the ghetto, they're and so I think that the power of what we see also affects us tremendously. And I'm so glad that at least my kids are living in a world where there's more than there's more than the broadcasting. There's access to different ways, or you can find out about different things, because back then it was there was when we did see us, it was in not always in negative, not always in positive ways, and sort of limited in who we were, and that kind of thing. So
I agree with that. The images that we see on TV and media both ways. So we have a conception of what the Black American person is like, because they don't always, like, the Cosby is a great show, not just for the US, but just for the whole world, because it showed a lawyer, a doctor, and balanced kids who just do kid stuff. You know what I mean? That's breaks all those stereotypes, and the stereotypes are still there today. Just to see that part of the US, and I'm not saying the other parts don't happen, it's just that's the only image we see. And then for us, it's kids who are hungry, which
with the flies all circling
Big
around,
belly. Yeah.
like,
Yeah, absolutely.
we're all
Mhm.
starving, and it's half naked on the street. I mean, that does exist again, but it's like the danger of a single story. If that's the only thing that you see is just kids, with flies on top of their head, then, of course you think Africa is just this terrible, terrible place where everybody's starving and, nobody has food. So it's being able to see different images of us, and more complex images that I think.
and it could be something simple like even Tarzan. Tarzan is showing the local Africans how to get through the forest.
Yeah, I mean,
Think about that.
why?
We need to be led.
Why? Yeah.
So
On your own land too, no less.
yeah,
You,
so
yeah,
I'm
you
not,
don't know how to get home,
so
apparently.
it's
Yeah.
just subtle images that
Yeah.
we've been here long enough. So I'm sure when we first started, we had those misconceptions. And the way you break that down is to meet people and have
Right.
dinner. Like I met up with Damalar, I met up with other people. Sometimes I'm defending people to my cousins because I'm like, no, you haven't really hung around. You just know the
Right. The
stereotype.
stereotypes. And then also, we are not taught as Africans about slavery. We don't understand how slavery has inflected. I mean, we're taught about it, but I think there's not an understanding of, because, again, Hollywood says, oh, slavery was however many years ago. Now, if you just work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, then, and so that story permeates. And so I think people don't Africans, I would say, a lot of them don't have an understanding truly of what African Americans went through. And so like all these stereotypes come in without the understanding of, or the context of what happened. So of course I went to high school here, and I learned about it. But if you're coming as an immigrant and as an adult and you don't understand the full story, you don't understand why, for example, Birmingham is segregated, right? You don't understand why it's not just so easy to just go to school and what school you go to. Like if you don't have that understanding, then you may have a negative impression of African Americans because you don't understand the context of what happened, what continues to happen, and how it affects, people's mobility, people's ability to, to live in the United States. So I think for Africans, I think that's a challenge, is just to have more of an understanding of what happened and how it affects all of us, right? And I had people ask me, well, why did you sell us into slavery? I had somebody ask me that, I think, and it's a hard question to answer, but I think just having the conversations. And so when I say, well, I'm from East Africa, and the slave trade wasn't necessarily in East Africa, it was mostly in the West, but again, I think there's not enough of an understanding on both ways. Not that that absolves us, but it's just the understanding of each other's point of view. So
I don't think that it's only Africa that looks at it that way, and there's not that understanding. I know for sure it's not an understanding here in the US. We don't understand it either. We think the same thing. It was 400 plus years ago that we came here. We've been out well over 100 years out of slavery. So we think that we are okay, but those things have trickled down into who we are. Some of it is that we are traumatized people from what happened in slavery, and our response is from a place of trauma because of what happened in slavery. So it's not something that's understood. We think that some of the things that we do is because of what we see on TV. You're just bad people. You belong in jail and prison. You can take yourself just not even too far back to the first African American president, right? So and the first African American vice president, and how they're talked about, how they have to prove themselves to be worthy of being here. And if you say one word that doesn't sound like you are with everything that happens here, you haven't fully assimilated, go back to where you came from.
right.
My answer is to Chicago. Now I would have no reason to go home to Chicago because that's where I'm from. But there is that assumption that, you should just go back at the command of others. Well, I didn't come here willingly. My people didn't come here willingly in the first place. And now we're here. You have no right to tell me where I'm going to go. If I want to go to the grocery store, I go. If I want to go to the bathroom, I go to the bathroom. If I want to go upstairs, downstairs, or outside and check the mail, I do that. And you don't have a right to tell me that. But I don't think we fully understand the damage that we still live with today due to slavery. So I can't have you just take that up on like maybe we should understand it a little bit more. No, that's the way that it was meant to be.
Right. And
None of us would understand it, so that we could disconnect from Africa.
right. And so there's
That
sort
was the
of
whole
like
point.
a divide and conquer. So I think there's a lot of times a division where there could be more understanding that, we have a shared history.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So my next question, and really, I want to hear from you, Monica, on this one. As an immigrations attorney, why is it that we don't hear the story very often coming from, or at all? You may be the first one to tell this story to a lot of our listeners, right? They've never heard immigration stories coming out of Africa. Why is that? And could that be a part of the mischaracterization of who we are here in the United States, who you are in Africa?
I think, well, it's a couple of things, right? So first of all, when we talk about immigration, unfortunately, it's framed in the lens of, border security, people coming in from Central, South America to the US. So that is the number one. And the numbers do show that, again, the proximity that I was talking about, a lot of, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of, political unrest. So a lot of that. So I think that's also what it is. I think there is a large immigrant population from Africa, a lot from West Africa, South Africa, East Africa, and they have different pockets throughout the United States. I would say a lot of, California, on the coast, so on the East Coast, West Coast, not as much in Alabama. Because I think immigrant populations tend to sort of cluster, you know, one person finds a spot and then they sort of join to follow. But I think that I don't know why it's not talked about as much. But we, you know, we are there. I think it's just not what the national mainstream narrative is. And again, just circling back to the fact that it is harder for us to get here, because again, you got to have the means, and you have to get on a plane and, you know, come this way. So I think we are, you know, have a large population, particularly from certain countries. But we also tend to we are not always as vocal about our immigration stories. So I think that also has a part to do with it. And so I think trying to assimilate, you know, not to rock the boat as much. And so that's probably why a lot of us don't talk about it, you know, as prominently. But, you know,
I think
we're here.
we talk about it amongst ourselves. But I think we're also raised to don't put your business out on the streets.
Right.
we don't come out and tell. Sometimes we're like, they told us everything
Right.
about that. We're like, who
Right.
does that? You know, we go to the gas station and I know everything about the gas attendant, and that's shocking to us. Like, how do you tell everybody your stuff? So I think we're guarded. We have to figure out who to trust in terms of just not really knowing the culture very well. Sometimes people will use your culture to, like, you know, to almost bully you in a way. So you kind of tend to stick together. We're different because we have friends from everywhere, but we tend to talk to everybody and stuff like that. But I think it's just generally just our nature is just to mind your own business. But if you take the time to show interest in me, then I will tell you my story. But sometimes people are not, they don't ask those questions, if that makes sense. It's more like, oh, you're lucky to be here, you know, not even thinking at one point you might be missing home and what you have at home. Because people think America is the be all.
Yeah, it's and it is great, but you know, there are things that, you know, you miss, and you know, you do lose some things in that migration, you know, as well. So yeah, but I think we think that if we just dig our head, you know, bare our head, and, you know, again, American dream, just work hard, then, you know, we will somehow do better. But also I think, yeah, we are guarded. I would agree with that. And sort of distrusting sometimes, depending on the situation that we left, and yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I love both of your points on that, because I think what you just showed was the common thread, right? What happens in my house, I was taught that as a child. What happens in our house, we don't share that with everybody.
Right.
We don't easily trust. I don't know who to trust. I'm always watching my back. And I have to make sure, you know, when we think of even how we speak to one another, how I speak when I come home is not how I speak when I go to work. I have two different languages. You can call it Ebonics all you want to, whatever you want to call it, but I have two different languages. How the words that I use with my family, with my friends, when I'm comfortable, are totally different when I'm on my job. I got to make sure in corporate America that I'm articulating, that I'm saying it right, that I'm assimilating
Right.
to what's expected in corporate America. So I see that common thread from what you're saying. So how often is it that someone comes to you and says, "Hey, what's your story?" Or do they assume that they know it?
Not often. I think the only trigger is our last name, right? So then they're like, where are you from? And so those are the kind of questions. But I haven't had too many people ask me, the biggest thing, frankly, is, oh, they want to know, do you live with animals? And so, you know, because Africa has got animals. I mean, I've heard a lot. I don't know if that's the same for you, but do you have monkeys roaming in your backyard? And do you have, you know, do you have buildings? Do you have, so honestly, a lot of times it's ignorance questions. There's no, I don't know how else to say
Very.
that. So sometimes it can be off-putting also to put yourself out there because they think we have no infrastructure. We have, you know, it's just, it's all about the animals, which I love animals, but you know, there's more than that. And so it's been a very long time. And I think also because we don't have as strong accents anymore, I think we can sort of, so it's been a long time for me. I don't know about you, Rita.
I think it's the different phases. At one point, I wanted everybody to know. Now I'm like, eh. And I know that's not good, but I gauge your question.
Yeah, how deep am I gonna?
Dodge your question or what you ask me. And if you ask me an insightful question, it makes me pause. Like, huh, okay, I'll give you a good answer.
But for a lot of time, we used to joke and be like, yeah, we have a monkey or a lion that sleeps with us. I remember there was that phase where, and then, you know, to be like, really? And then be like, ah.
And then they say really, and they believe it.
And they believe it, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is
let me not lie.
yeah. So
The fact
Be
that
hard for me not to do that, to say,
the fact
yeah,
that you
yeah, that's
believe
good.
it, yeah. So it just says, okay, your baseline understanding is low. And at one point that used to annoy me, but now I just educate or sometimes don't educate depending
yeah,
on my
depending on
will,
how I
the
woke up.
situation, if I'm just trying to get in and get out. And so we're not as good as we used to be about trying to get people up to speed, depending on who we're talking to. So but if you ask me an insightful question, I actually get surprised, but then I'll sit down and explain it to you. You know what I mean? So
It seems like I probably would let them float on kind of without, it seems like you already know me. How did you know? You know, that kind of, just
Yeah.
keep it moving. But I do know that we have a need, if the person wants it, to educate, right? We do have a need and really somewhat of a responsibility. I find that even being here all my life, that I do educate our Caucasian sisters and brothers on who we are and how things impact me. Now, if I feel that they're not going to be able to receive it and understand it, and they really are not asking the question to learn anything or get better, they want to stay in ignorance, then I'll leave them there.
Yeah.
I'll leave them there. You know, you can stay right there in ignorance, but otherwise, I will try to educate. And I
Yeah.
think it's my responsibility to do
One
that.
thing that's hard though, and I mean, this is an honest conversation, is when you do have Caucasian people say, well, you're not like the African Americans. And so that's also disappointing sometimes because it's like, wait, you're using me as a standard in a way that I don't feel comfortable with. So you're not like the other Black people. And so that's hard. I think part of being an immigrant is being in these two identities. And so it's like, I don't really, you know, it can be hard sometimes because you're not Black enough necessarily for African American. You know, it's living in multiple dualities and not really fitting in any one. So
Really good. It's really good. Then let's look at what do you miss most? I know it's been a while, but what do you miss most coming from Africa? What's in Africa that you like? Because I know you recently had a trip back.
right.
What do you miss? What do you miss?
You want me to go? Go ahead.
you know, when you go back and you realize things shut down at a certain time, and the US is 24/7. You can go to the grocery store at 2 a.m., 2 p.m. It doesn't matter where, there's gonna be something open, somebody grinding, you have pagers. Well, not pagers anymore, I'm dating myself. But you know, you have your cell phone. But
Let me ask you, Rita, is your cell phone
always,
perhaps in a bag or something? You plug it into the car? Does it have a port? Okay, I'm just
you're
checking.
always
Go ahead.
available. But when you go there, things shut down. And I don't know if now there's a reason why it's so developed. You don't shut down, okay? But the ability to just say, we're shutting it down. Their social life is off the
I
chain.
mean, I'm telling you,
They're just like, people fun with
for
me.
sure, for sure.
That ability, I mean, and people may not even see it, the joy in just sitting down. And our joys are simple, they're not complicated per se. And just hanging out with family and friends, and just even if it's just going to someone's house and you're like, it's too late to go home, so we're sleeping here. That ease of coming and going. And I think back in the day, maybe in the US, they had that, but my life right now, everybody is very in your own house, you do your own thing, you know. Nobody wants to get out and hang, and you're forced to. So that kind of like so you end up laughing more, enjoying life more. I didn't know I missed that until I went back and I said, oh, this is, because I'm like, I got things to do, but I can't do them. So then you get in that mode like, oh, let me just relax a little bit. So I do miss that part of it. And some people are like, well, you can't get stuff done fast enough in Africa, which is true. But I saw it as a different light this time around. Like, they have a life more than I do, and I missed that part of it.
We
This is
try to call it work-life balance here, right? So you got to balance your work and balance your life, but we never really get there, so it's like, I know for me, for a long time, if I take a vacation day, a PTO day from work, I didn't know how to relax. You lose that ability because you don't use it, so you're stressed all the time. It's like, oh, what didn't I do? Okay. And now working from home, I could just go downstairs and at 2 in the morning, log in and get some work done because I forgot to do this, or on my weekends when I should be able to relax. So that's admirable to be able to shut it down and say, I'm going to relax. I'm going to enjoy my family.
Mhm.
I think we've lost that a little bit. That's good. What about you, Monica? What do you
The
miss?
food, the food, the food, the food. I
I
mean,
left the food.
I enjoy going home to eat because, I mean, Uganda is in Eastern Africa, it's by the equator, so it's a sort of tropical terrain. So you got fresh mangoes, you got pineapple, like they have the best pineapples that I've ever tasted. Like they're sweet, they're fresh. They have papaya. The local dish is called matoke. So like I remember we would go home and eat and eat and eat and lose weight, and you come back and your skin is glowing because it's all, I guess, what you'd call organic here. So I enjoy the food. I took my 3 kids and we had chapati, which is like a bread, like it's like a round piece of bread, flat bread, and they ate it every day, and they'll eat avocados. So I really enjoy the food, and just food that is fresh and is good for you, and not having to worry about it, because that was one of the hardest things coming here was the food. And so just adjusting to that. So I would say the food. And then again, yeah, I think, Uganda is by no means a rich country. There's a lot of poverty, but at the same time, people have a sense of joy, and that's just that you don't always find here. And it's more communal. I also this time just was like, wow, everybody's Black. And you're just so used to being in spaces where you're one of two or one of three in a majority, you know so that was just kind of cool. Like I felt like we stayed at a place and I could just let my kid, and also safety, not feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to constantly watch where are my kids, where are they, like, and we were on a property and they could just walk and relax a little bit and, go pick some avocados and be free without that constant paranoia sometimes that we have in the US. So I enjoyed that.
When they said I'd go out and play.
Go and play and just come back at night, and you're not, nobody's, you're just free. Having gone for the first time with children, that was the thing that struck me.
Yeah. And you say everybody's Black. That is quite interesting because even in our community, if say that I am in an urban setting and everybody around me is Black, we still have that light skin, dark skin, um, half white, whatever, half something else, good hair. I don't know if you've ever said it, please don't ever say it again if you have, because that really gets on my nerves. But good hair, and I guess mine is bad hair because it's kinkier. I'm not sure what to think on that one. So it's always that, it's still that almost racial divide even within the Black community. So do you see that
Oh,
there? Do we go light skin, dark skin, or is that top?
No, I think the thing that strikes you when you come to the US is you're always asked the color of your skin. And and I'm like, why do I need to color the skin and get a potato? You know, just general things. I mean, I think for us, it's more economics, the rich and the poor. That's the divide. And then maybe tribalism.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like we're all kumbayaing either, because I think that's not. I think wherever you have people, there's friction. So there's friction between different tribes, and are you this tribe versus that tribe? This certain particular tribe has more people in political power. So there's definitely divisions there. So I think we'd be doing a disservice to say that it's some sort of utopia where everybody's getting along, because I don't want to make that's not real. Unfortunately, where there are humans, there's going to be divisions, but at the same time, there's a certain ease in that you're not on your guard all the time. At least we
I
weren't.
don't think the division is on racial lines.
Yeah, it's more on tribal lines, which is
Yeah.
another conversation. But
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because we've grown up with that, with the skin color issue.
Mhm.
So um, it almost creates a sense of, we talked about safety a little bit, a sense of not feeling fully that safety, and you have to know who you're talking to. And some of that, if I took it way back, it would come from slavery once again, right? Because you had those who were in the house, they were safest, and then you had those who worked out in the field. So the house looked over those who worked out in the field, and really it was a less than status if you were working out in the field and doing all of the work. You wanted to be in there with your master in the house. And usually the house was reserved for those who had a lighter skin. Sometimes the master's Black children were the
Mhm.
ones that were actually welcomed into the house. The darker ones would be outside. Go figure. You're out in the sun working all day, so that could make your skin a little bit darker. So that's why we still to this day, one of those things that we've carried on down through the generations that we still do to this day. So let's then talk about what is the biggest cultural difference that you can think of between the U.S. and your country of origin, or I dare say Africa, because there's a lot of countries there, so I'm sure there's different cultures going on. And then to you, Monica, how do you carry on your culture with your children even after that? So what's the difference first, and then how can that be carried on? Or is there a difficulty behind carrying it on with children
I
born
mean,
here?
it is difficult, and I had this conversation actually with my other sister, and so are my children who were born in the U.S. African American? And I said they're African American. They're not African, right? So I think by nature of where they are born and where they live, I definitely want them to know where they're from, which is why, we took this trip last year. And as they're getting older, I try to just tell them things about my home country, about, just knowing, and I understand that's a luxury, but knowing their people. This is your grandmother, this is your great grandmother, this is where, you came from, this is the land where your mother was born, your grandmother was born, these are your people. I unfortunately, my sister and I, our native language is Luganda. We, we are sort of half speak it. And so it's not something that I can necessarily pass on to my children. So I just try to have them have a sense of identity and where they're from. I think that's the biggest thing, while also understanding that they're here, right? And they're American for the most part. And I think I try to instill in them a certain core values that my parents raised me with, and our parents raised us with. And I just try to, right now I'm at a stage where I just want them to have the knowledge. So bigger cities like Atlanta have a larger Ugandan population, so there'll be, different picnics and stuff that I'll try to take them to. But it is hard. I think I just, because again, we're so busy, we're all in our own worlds, but just trying to give them a sense of knowledge, of understanding, that their familiarity, like I let them listen to Ugandan music, I let them listen to Afro beats, just so they haven't, so they're not like, what is this? But that's how I try to do it now. As they get older, I probably need to do more, but I haven't figured that out yet. So
I think it's a tricky question in a sense. Like even our upbringing amongst our siblings, we all lived in different African countries, so there's different cultures you bring, but I think we're more alike than we're not alike. Generally, we're family orientated, like we believe in the family, we get irritated with each other, but we make sure we connect with each other, so that's we take care of people back home. That's an expectation, that's more the culture. We just it's kind of hard to say the differences, because I guess in our culture we just take care of our family, take care of each other. It's family oriented, I guess. That's our culture.
Which is also the African American culture as well.
And then the thing is, it gets lost when you're trying to assimilate or get ahead in life. So we're saying we do all that, but we're probably not. It's a balance, like we said, because I found myself changing. I used to have a job where I was on the phone all the time, and I used to be like, how am I on the phone? Nobody understands me. But without realizing it, I was changing how I spoke just to be understood. But it was something I was doing without even recognizing that I was doing. So sometimes, if you're not intentional about getting back to your people, you can start to lose things about yourself that you didn't realize. So
what is, as an aunt to a niece and a nephews, plural, that were born here, what can you do, or will you do to preserve the culture? Because they need that. They need to carry that. And I know as they go down the generations, they'll lose more and more. Like you said, accents will go. Some of the things will be left off from where you came from. But how do you preserve that as an aunt, or help preserve that?
we get together with other Ugandans and we eat our food and we talk about things that are related to the country and the family. We talk about grandparents, like even how we call grandparents is different, just you have to just have them be around, be yourself basically, which me being myself is different, when I say no, I mean it's different. Like I'm more like the way I feel like aunts have to say no.
She's the no aunt.
You try to get, I mean, you know how it says it takes a village. I'm part of the village, and sometimes I'm like, no, we don't do that, And I'm like, I mean, it's just, you just have to be that person where you kind of carry on like traditions, even the way they're named reflects, where they're from.
Right. And their names have meaning, and we talk about, the meaning of their names, and I think it's subtle. I don't think we're yeah. But yeah, then the names and just know, again, it's back to knowing where they're from.
Really, really good. So, Monica,
Mm-hmm.
what can we learn from our brothers and sisters of African culture? I shouldn't even say African, I mean, because it's different
Yeah.
countries. You know what I mean? What can we learn?
What can we learn?
Mhm.
Um,
I think we're all different. I know,
right.
actually comes up with an answer. You can't have one size fits all answer to this question. If you really want to know about me, you need to say, "Hey, Rita, how you doing? Let's talk."
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get to know me. Me and Sunny, we laugh when people say we're twins because we very different in our approach to things.
Yeah.
Like we have the same core values, you know, we the core is the same. But if you get to know us, you're like, oh yeah, they're
They're
different.
very different. Very different.
But if I've known you for 10 years and you say we're twins, then I'm like, you don't know us. You know what I mean? Because we're not the same. So if you take the time, I like the scripture in Romans, I think it says if you just in life, not even Africa or anything, if you want to know somebody, have a meal with them. Because if you come to my house and I cook chicken, you're gonna be like, now this chicken tastes different from how I cook chicken. Because the seasoning and how we do seasoning, it's gonna be different. How we fry it, how we make our stews gonna be different. You'd be like, it's the same chicken. It's just not gonna taste the way you're used to tasting it. You know what I mean? But that will lead to conversations like, oh, y'all like this or y'all like that. Or the way I make my collard greens or why you know, you just learn people by just sitting with them, eating with them, talking to them. So what can you learn from? We just can learn from each other by just sitting and talking, being in each other's presence. Sometimes even working together, you know, sometimes we sometimes bad about assimilating, so we won't necessarily show all of our Africanness. You know, we won't bring all our African foods to work because you'd be like, "What are you eating?" I mean, and then like, don't worry about what I'm eating. Actually, I bring my African food to work. Forget that. I just bring whatever I want to bring to work. But I do know that it's different, and you just have to
Yeah,
spend time.
I think being open, right? Because I think we have preconceived notions of other cultures, and I think just being open on both sides, right? Wanting to know, being curious, and just learning about.
Not being judgmental. So if
Yeah.
I tell you I eat this and you don't eat it, that doesn't make it's just different, you know. Like we would eat. What do we eat that's weird? I don't know. But
Yeah.
we could eat certain foods and you think that's strange, and then you could eat crawfish and we're like, why would you eat a crawfish?
Yeah. Why?
It's a bug. It's a bug.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just
A
different.
water bug, no
I
less.
know. I mean, the first I went to a crawfish bowl in Louisiana and I wasn't eating it right. So the guy told me, you need to break it, do this, and then you suck the juices from the head. And I'm like, that's gross. But you know, some of the foods we eat, they might say the same thing. So I mean, I appreciate it. I eat crawfish. I mean, minus the head, but you know, just be open to things just being different.
Yeah.
Not necessarily better or worse. It's just that's how we do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love that just being open to it,
Yeah.
you know. And I think to a fault sometimes we think we know what we don't know, and we start to um kind of like I said earlier, place labels on others according to what we think we know. But when we're open, then we can let you kind of form that picture of who you are and how we can relate to one another. So yeah, I love that being open.
we're both. I'm gonna highlight this. We're both soft spoken, but that doesn't mean we don't have stuff to say. It
Right.
just means we say
Hear
stuff.
my voice. Yeah.
I mean, and then you know, some people are louder now. That's just how our family is. We're just
Yeah.
a more laid back, soft spoken type family. So we're not necessarily, and we're polite too. So we're not. If you just start telling your story, we'll probably just listen and let you go and say they don't really want to know about me, you know, because we're polite too. Sometimes to a fault. So
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. All right. So what are we like, I guess those of us who are born here, because I'm just gonna skip a question here. I want to know, I'm born here. Why should I be proud to be of African descent as an African American? Let me frame this though, because I see you looking around for the words, Monica. So while you're searching for those words, let me frame this and why I asked this question. And warning, it's going to be a little bit crude, but I had someone say to me not too long ago, and it just took everything in me not to just slam the phone down as if we can do that with a cell phone. But they said to me, I won't tell their gender, I hate being called African American. And I paused there, African American. And I'm thinking, how dare you? And this person, hey, listen, I'm in the US. We go by skin color. You like 50 shades darker than me, saying you hate being called African American. How do I dispel that? What should have been my response to that? Why should I be proud to be? Because I'm proud to be African American. So I want to know, why? Why should I?
I
It's a complicated answer.
Okay.
Again, one size doesn't fit all. That's my disclaimer. I think we have to go back and address the slavery portion of the African American. You know what I mean? A lot of people think negatively towards that. We need to go back and look at, like, if you find an African that we're rich in heritage, there's a lot of history in us. If most African communities, it's all about community, it's about unity. We take care of our old, we take care of our young, and then there's a lot of history there that people don't know. So they already, I feel like when someone has such a strong feeling towards that, it's because you're thinking there's no value in the Africa part. You know what I mean? And so they're not valuing what Africa is in there, which is kind of like a self-hate in a way.
It is a self-hate. Yeah.
I mean, and then, but I do get what they're saying. I'm different from an African because we are different. And they're trying to, except I think in the situation that you described, I feel like they're seeing Africa as something negative,
Right.
something to hide. But you can't hide Africa because
Come on now.
look in the mirror. But I think they don't know the rich history of Africa. And I think too, Africa is mostly a nonviolent. Most tribes are nonviolent. Most tribes are easygoing. Most tribes are they're not violent. And I think sometimes because we were non-violent, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I think people took that and
advantage.
took advantage of that.
Like a weakness.
Yeah, and so sometimes people get to write our stories for us. And that's not the true story. If they feel that violently against it, I don't want to be called that, because then that's something you got to look and say, why do I feel this way about it? And there's probably going to be something negative that they associate with it. And it will probably play back to the movies they're seeing, the images. Like, when I flew through South Africa, the technology in South Africa was way advanced than it was in Alabama.
Wow.
But people will be surprised to know that, because people are just only focusing on the negative, nobody's, like, we're communities, there's good, bad, but there's also advancement as well. Is there room for growth? Oh yeah. Is there room for development? Oh yeah. But if you have such a narrow view, we need to open up their view of what it is. And then also, being an African American who's lived here all their life, it's different than being an African who's been in Africa all their life. It's just two different viewpoints. But I think the negativity comes from just having a narrow view.
I think it kind of shifted a little bit. For me, I saw a shift after Black Panther, because I think we were like, oh, we can I mean, obviously Wakanda is a mythical, place, but I think there was a sense of.
Wait a minute, Monica, say that again. Wakanda is a mythical place, right?
Yeah, located
Okay.
off of
Okay.
East
Thank
Uganda.
you.
That's kind of one of our jokes is like
Thank
it's a place, but it's a mythical place.
Yes.
But it's an aspirational place, and I think that just I personally felt like people were more receptive and have been more receptive to understanding that there's more to Africa than what was shown before. And again, like I said, with YouTube and you can see more, you can actually find out more information. Afro beats are is I don't know if you've heard of Afro beats, but Afro beats are like African songs that are like R&B mixed with a little bit of African rhythm. And it's the fastest growing musical genre. Usher has R&B song. I mean, Afrobeat song. Yeah, obviously he's R&B, but Afrobeat song. And so I think people are becoming more international, more interconnected. And so basically that stemmed out of R&B and, and then sort of we put our own flavor on it a little bit. So I think that it's also just not knowing or having a limited idea of what it means to be African. And I think in this day and age, there's ways to find out more if you're curious.
Going back to the Wakanda, it is a mystical
Mythical.
place.
Easy for you to say.
But it did take different cultures
Right.
in Africa and put it in this one country.
Right.
We had this argument about it where someone said, well, why didn't they just go to say somewhere like Ghana and base it out of Ghana? Because they have a lot of I just pick Ghana as an example. Yeah. Like, why did we make it a mythical place? There are places in Africa that are thriving that you could have based it out of and it would have been good. Why do we just make it America has these places, I think that's the disservice where we're like, this is not real in Africa. We have to make it unreal. So I do have that criticism of it, but I do know they took like the best parts of African culture and made it become one person, like one group, because when I looked at some of that's from South Africa, that's from East Africa, that's from like they just took little parts of it, which is great. I personally liked it, but I'm just saying it didn't have to be a non-real country. It could have been real.
Right, but
would it have do you think it would have limited it though? If I put it in Ghana, then I would have limited it to that one culture, or was there a way to do it where you could have gotten to a country that would have allowed you to put those different cultures together?
And you were saying that it's based on
based on the comic that was written in the 1960s.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Disney's, there are people that are true comic people that probably wanted it to adhere to, but you can change anything you want, but I think it's based on the comic series. And so that was the country in the
If you went to Uganda, there's enough culture in Uganda that could sustain the country.
Okay.
Yeah. You could incorporate it in the Ugandan movie, Bring It to the Salt, what's that song? The chess player.
Oh, Queen of Katwe is a movie based in Uganda, and it's about a chess player that came from Uganda.
And it has her culture. I think that you could bring the culture in. You could bring, because like I said, we have tribes. Each tribe has its own richness, and each country, because of the borderlines, there'll be multiple tribes. So you can definitely have enough to hold it, The thing is, I think people think it doesn't sell, but it does sell.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So good. Look, you have taught me so much in the short span of time. And we need another hour or 3. Go ahead, Monica. We need more time.
Can I say one thing that I really wanted to say? Okay, so I obviously circling back to immigration law. I wanted to say that the civil rights. So you asked me the reverse, why African Americans should be proud of Africa. I want to highlight why we should be proud of African Americans. And for number one, the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement was very instrumental in creating, from the Civil Rights Act, led to the laws that created what's called the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act. And so because African Americans fought for liberties, fought for civil rights, fought for freedom for all, that is what led to us being able to have laws on immigration, because before immigration used to be from certain countries, and specific countries, Europe, wherever, there was we've always had a quota system. And I forgot to say this but we've always had a quota system of how many immigrants can come from a certain country, right? There's a sort of quota. And so had it not been for the Civil Rights Movement, had it not been for that leading to the INA, the Immigration National Act, we wouldn't have immigration as we know it today. And so people being able to come from a multitude of countries and not just a certain, region. And so I think that is something that we don't talk about enough, the interconnection between those two things. And I have the statutes, but I don't know them off the top of my head, but that's something that led, because obviously why are immigrants here? They want a better life, they want equality, they want, they're a lot of times fleeing from something that is not great in the country, let's just be honest, right? If it was great, they would stay where they are. And I think African Americans and the Civil Rights Movement has been instrumental in creating, liberty and freedom and fairness for all, for African Americans and for people who come to this country. So I don't think that gets talked about enough. That's something that I wanted to highlight and say that we are connected. I mean, we owe a lot of debt to the people that fought for all of that, for all people. So that's my.
So I never connected the two. I never connected those. So that's really, really good to be able to connect those. Now, would you only see me as an immigrant who had the tougher story of immigration? I'm struggling to get in the country, leave and flee something that was just horrific in my country? Or do you see me when I just simply want to immigrate and it's not a hard process for me to get here to the US? What are you seeing as a immigration attorney?
Oh,
Is it only one side or the other, or is it both of them?
It's a really hard
slow,
process,
long,
painful, hard. And so it's not just a matter of like, I want to come to the US. I mean, if you're fleeing from a country that's at war and you're waiting to be a refugee, again, there's a quota system. So you're hoping and praying that your number is going to be called. If you are an immigrant from Africa and you're trying to come here, you're hoping that you somehow get a visa. It takes years. I think that's the biggest misconception. It takes years and years and years for your number
over
to be called.
decades.
Decades. It can take over 10 years so people are just like, well, just get in line. It's not that simple. And so that's what I also want to highlight, is that the immigration process is very complex. It's very hard. People, wait, and some people never get a chance to come, so it's not an easy process. It's, thousands of dollars in filing fees. If you hire an attorney, you have to pay the attorney. You have to wait, you can wait years and years and years. I average one particular type of visa for victims of crimes averages 10 years, 10-year wait to be able to. And in the meantime, you're in limbo. So it is not an easy process by any means. So it's almost like winning the lottery in itself. It's not easy.
Because the process takes so long, you're in limbo for so long. That's probably another reason why people don't share their business, because you're like, I hope this works out.
Yeah.
And then you're in limbo for so long, we don't even talk about the mental health, what it does to your mental.
Oh my goodness.
Isolation, because you may not see your family for 10 years while you're waiting, right?
Automatically my family they're not a part of that package. So I come over, my children and my husband.
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. A lot of times they're not, depending on the type of visa. So you may be coming here because you're a nurse and you want a visa. Well, now you got to wait. So then my family's back in Uganda and they're waiting years and years and years for, so it's always precarious. It's not a given. And so that's something that
And there's a backlog, and if they lose your paperwork, you got to start all over again.
yeah. And if you're from certain countries, like for example, if you're in Mexico or for China, you wait even longer. You go like to the back because of because of the quota system.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing by any means. So
Wow. Wow. Well, listen, I thank you for your transparency and just really sharing with this audience something that I'm sure probably 99% of us have never, ever heard before. So now I know that all I have to do is ask, what's your story? And Rita may very well share with me her story. But I have one thing that I want to do. So I'm going to go to the side a little bit and pull it out of my bag of tricks here. I want Rita to really connect, because I'm a minister. So I want to connect this to who God is um, in what we've talked about in your story. It gives those who are sitting and waiting and thinking that their story may never be your story. Hopefully, we can give them just a little hope to just hold on just a little bit longer. But Rita, you'll choose a box. Do you want this lovely darker box? It says Psalms. Or do you want this colorful green and pink box? It says prayers and promises for women. What do you want? Which box? Black or green and
Let's do prayers and promises for women.
women? Let's bless the women with this. I'm just going to pull a card,
Okay.
and it only has a scripture on the front. This is coming from Psalms 17:6. Mm.
How do I get
I am
some?
I know out of all of that, because they do have other scriptures in there, but it's Psalm 17:6. So
Okay.
I am praying to you because I know you will answer, oh God. Bend down and listen as I pray. Connect it for us.
Um, I think for us, the immigration story is one about prayer. We didn't get into this, but we said we came here. My dad came first, and then we came later. And then he died within 8 months, probably, of us coming over here. Excuse me. So we had to lean on prayer to get through a lot of things. There were a lot of uncertainty whether or not we will stay here or go back. We had to pray through getting into college, pray through, fixing our immigration status so we'll be legal. We had to pray through, you know, Psalm says God is a father to the fatherless and a protector of the widow, which my mom was a widow. My mom was with us. And how God became Abba Father, that was through prayer. Like, we didn't have the influence that we may have had back home. We were basically, that's one thing we didn't talk about. Coming to the US is an equalizer. If we were big shot back home, nobody knows you here. You just start at the bottom. Everybody's the same. It's the great equalizer. So we didn't have the influence, but through prayer, God opened up doors for us to be where we are, to get in the schools that we got into, to get into the homes that we got into, to thrive. I mean, we've been through a lot, but we don't. I like people don't think we've been through a lot. They think we just sailed through it, but that's just a testimony of just God seeing us through prayer.
God is. Absolutely. What we do know is that Monica is a immigration attorney, but Rita, what do you do?
I'm a pharmacist. I work at the hospital over here and work with an infusion center. So we do cancer patients and GI patients, and just whatever you would need an infusion outpatient. I'm your girl. So we just make sure those things look good, and basically in healthcare, basically helping people, which is what I feel like I'm there to help. So, and I'm see how God uses me even there. So championing people. So that's what I do.
Awesome. That's awesome. I thank you so much once again, and I can't thank you enough for coming in, premiering on the Unboxed Pearls podcast, and just allowing yourself just to open up in with such transparency. I know that I will probably have to call on you again and again and again, because as it gets viewed, I know that there will be some questions that will need to be answered, and you have those answers. So thank you so much once again. God bless both of you, and I just look forward to seeing you again in the future. So for all of you who are out there who have had the opportunity to watch, we ask you just to even subscribe to this channel and listen for more. And just share the story of Rita and Monica with someone who needs to know, so that you can educate as well. So God bless you all. Take care. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
Thank
having me.
you.
Appreciate it.